We're Buddha of Barmies. There are more cluster bombs than people in Laos. They stopped falling in the year I was born. America left soon after. The other day, a young woman I know saw people turning war scrap into fashionable bracelets. No one considers turning them into statues of Buddha. Recycling only goes so far out here. A third of those who die every year are under 12, caught in the hot, swift center of flame and shrapnel, dormant for nearly 5 decades. Most of their parents weren't even born when these lethal leftovers were dropped. In America, my nieces sing, "London Bridge is falling down." In Laos, my nieces sing songs not to touch the bombies. My new next-door neighbor is an old F-105 pilot my father picked up from the Hanoi Hilton. He knows my country well, but we don't have much to talk about, except our gardens. My cousin flew into Afghanistan at the start of a new war. We haven't spoken in years. I look at the pictures of hell in my mother's temple near Modesto. It's a new year, and young children run with toy guns sold to them by a vendor who could care less about karma and history. Our monks bless every living thing in sight, hoping it will do some good for a change. Surprises in America. It took me by surprise that Hitler was a vegetarian. Rudolf Hess, too. I remember reading about them as a boy. I remember the outrage when someone asked us to forgive them because the two would pet their dogs before night. It took me by surprise that Soldier of Fortune magazine offered a reward for Idi Amin, paid in gold, dead or alive. It was a lot of money. What does it say when mercenaries set bounties on tyrants' heads? It took me by surprise that we weren't always the good guys. What couldn't we buy in the land in the free? Why couldn't we go where we weren't welcome? It struck me by surprise that many people didn't believe I was an American when I had lived here all my life. If they had told me instead that my mother had died, I don't think I would have been as surprised. Sticky Rice Blues. I've seen it 1,000 times in a dozen years, read the rules, watched the videos, talked it over until someone's turned a different color. You never feel less Asian than days who burn the rice, but it's possible, even with a brand new bamboo steamer, a fistful of carnel, some heat and water. Some days it's easier to be a cat in a temple, a morning fog, a frog splashing into a pond, a hungry ghost on a holiday, waiting for a bell from hell to ring. Passafalan. En route to our cafe rendezvous on University Avenue, debating sushi, pho, or nachos, everything bagels or decadent croissants, famished literary ninjas crammed in a car, or were we Roman gun-ho samurai, pondering our ink-filled avatars, the verbose madame from Phnom Penh, who loves to sing "Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto," and every stanza of Bohemian Rhapsody at karaoke reminds me, Sabaidi will always be a foreign word. Aloha, America, of thee I sing. The grass. Among jade grass blades, even mighty Bodhi trees must share the same earth. On the stairway, in Ranpaban. Step as you will through life, 1,000 ways, 1,000 places. Carry a home in your heart or spend years seeking the door where your soul will always smile. Do you ease the way for others, or just yourself? Do you climb great mountains just to leave them unchanged? One day the heights of Holy Fusi will lay soft valleys, and we? Only memories. But our children's children, will they too have reason to smile, like those dreaming strangers who finished their stairs for us? Notes regarding the living heart. A single seed can turn into a forest. A single heart can transform a nation. To be brave is Jaika. To be generous is Jaguan. To test the body, climb a mountain. To test the soul, meet another. To find happiness, meet as strangers, but don't stay that way. With a sabaidi, greet the days one by one. With a gopchai and a smile, do what you can to change worlds, even 1 inch, one hand at a time. That is the path of the Jai, human and forever growing. Narrative of the Naxxers. Never read my life as the diary of some sad refugee. My account is not intended as a routine narrative of adversity overcome, mere survival once again transcending a descent to white-hot hell converted to a placid limbo of frogs. No, I miss the familiar strange here in a way that you cannot fathom. Our hard ghosts remain vigilant, thin as an ink scratch on an old palm leaf, haunting with a tongue claimed incomprehensible. The old signposts have been lost, but in strangeness, possibility. I hope, moving, a shadow in uncertain passages, making melodies for newsless souls. In daring this, might I shape some limitless star? We, scrambling to replace what we barely knew, barely recognize our tangled metamorphosis, our hymns of recovery, organs of uncertain purpose in the body cosmic, mistaken easily for endings, not new beginnings. Missoula, 1976. At 3 years old in Montana, I became a citizen on Flag Day during the American bicentennial. That and a cup of coffee gets you a cup of coffee, even if you write 1,000 poems for 1,000,000 elephants. I didn't stay there, of course, but in this city I met my first ghosts and dinosaurs, gorgons and ancient gods. I played with a young girl named Dulcinea, discovered the family pigs eaten by a bear, and saw my first neighbor die, crushed beneath a fallen telephone pole. I wish I remembered his name. A family dog Dutch, in his tragic jealousy, tried to kill me a few times. I still have one scar from it, after 50 years. But I miss him anyway, because that's the way refugee memory works. Midwestern Conversations. You're the whitest guy I know, Nate tells me over a backyard barbecue at the end of high school. It's supposed to be a compliment. You speak English even better than some of the students who were born here, a teacher tells me after hours. And it's true. I'm pulling you over, sir, because frankly you look like one of the bad guys, a cop tells me, his hand on a holstered Glock in Ohio. And you've got an awful lot of cash on you. But I'm just getting my rent for my landlady who doesn't trust my checks. The other day, a young writer sent me a poem entitled, I Can Be White. My heart can't give it an iota of serious consideration, although it's entirely possible. I'm just projecting. Jive nothing for Lance. A bomb popped in his face while he was digging a fire pit for his family squatting on the old mercenary camp in Shenquan province, so notorious for its UXO. They live there for the American plumbing, our host said flatly, watching volleyball games by the airstrip. This was wholly routine. The ruined grounds were frozen. Explosives, dormant blooms below, can be mistaken for ice and rock easily. And he screamed, the whole while we loaded him into the back of our rickety plane Tuichan that Lao Aviation picked up from the Russians when everyone thought the Cold War was going somewhere. The California girl on holiday was aghast and found it quite unscenic. What a paw on her search for highs. In Vattenpeng, a monk named Suk confided discreetly, we really hate hippies. Japanism, Laoism. Growing in the shadow of maples and pine cones when the actor was in the Oval Office, there were nearly no books about my realm of 1,000,000 elephants. A tattooed issue of National Geographic was my closest glimpse of a land I left 30 years ago as a waif. Like all those impressionable French in Paris after Perry's thunderous stunt in the Yokohama docks, we were busy watching the toys and diodes pouring in from the Ginza. Shogun warriors and roaring atomic monsters smashing Tokyo's matchstick streets occupied our children, while Detroit and Zenith squirmed at their fallen market share, wailing about MacArthur and our post-war treaties. The word Sapide was unheard of. It was better to learn how to say sayonara while raising shrimpy shrubs sold as stylish bonsai. Then, papayas were as rare as pad thai. It was sushi that was all the rage as wasabi horseradish set your nostrils afire, gasping for water. I was trained to revere razor-sharp katanas and zen, stoic as a bowl of udon. The heroes of my father, in the ruins of Lanchan and Luang Prabang, were barely footnotes, ground into mud in the aftermath of the wars no one wanted to remember. And now my skeletal editors are calling on me with their chattering skulls. Where are your words for Fanum and Chawanu, or the fallen honored at the Patusai? In all this time, surely one word about Vinchan will not kill you or your friends. It's hard to answer, sitting down to eat in July. Write what you know, my teachers admonish. Sipping my soda, I turn the pages of a withered book of Van Gogh prints, inspired by Hokusai and the ukiyo-e, and sigh. My flag is as obsolete as the word Indochine. I learned today I am older than my father lived to be. It's been too long since I last saw an elephant, or a monstrous river catfish. They tell me somberly the freshwater irrawaddy will be extinct before the next time I come by. I couldn't sketch any of them with a dam if I tried. A part of me wants to smack the next person who says I won't be Lao if I don't write about Laos. Do cops stop being cops when they're arguing about the White House and crooked pardons? Do robbers become priests if they talk about faith? Riviere saw the peaks of Hiroshima's Fujiyama among Eiffel's iron girders and still died French and human. Just right, young man, I hear my father whisper. Just right, and we'll sort it all out later. With the last bite, I return to making my own book with a defiant smile.